In this lesson, you're going to learn about two mindsets. And if you choose the right one, you'll be able to achieve more than you ever thought was possible in English ATAR, Year 12, and the rest of your life.
Everything you need to easily pass English ATAR. English ATAR made simple. Powered by Saints Coaching.
If, on the off chance, you've read this book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, you'll know exactly what I'm referring to. If you haven't read it, don't worry, no stress. We're going to basically summarize the most important parts of it. I've actually got a copy of the book. Where is it? Somewhere. Here we go. In the flesh. I'd heard lots of good things about it, and it was mentioned in a couple of other books that I'd read. And I was just about to embark on the journey of creating the course that you've just started. And I thought a boost in like a positive mindset would be beneficial. And I thought if it does what it says on the cover, then I could probably use some of that. I'll be highlighting some things that you can take away from it in the context of English ATAR. But remember, it has an application that is so much broader than English ATAR. English ATAR will be done by the end of this year. I'm sure you'll be glad that it will be done, but what I will be showing you, you can apply to literally anything in life if you really take it on board and accept the information. Okay, lesson objectives. We will be understanding the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Don't need this anymore. Then we'll outline some examples of each mindset in the context of English ATAR. As I said, I'm going to try and distill the information that I read in this book into the most important stuff. Then we'll read out some relevant extracts from the book. Don't worry, this is not going to be a lesson of me just reading pages and pages of the book. It is just going to be a couple of excerpts. And then we'll highlight a key takeaway. All right. The difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Let's start off with a fixed mindset first. What is this all about? Nice and easy definition here. Where you believe your intellect, ability, talent, etc., it's fixed, and therefore it can't be worked at and improved. If you want a nice and easy way to think about this, analogize this idea of a fixed mindset with pessimism, looking at life negatively, glass is half empty, that sort of outlook. That's what a fixed mindset is. And we'll go into some examples of a fixed mindset in a second, and it'll probably make a bit more sense then. What about a growth mindset? It's the opposite of a fixed mindset. It's where you believe that your intellect, ability, talent, etc., it can be improved and it can be worked at. It's not fixed, it's not stagnant, it's not something that you're just born with and it can't be improved. It's something that you can work at and get better at over time. Examples. We'll use an English ATAR example. Let's say you get 48% in a comprehending assessment. Maybe you've been there. Depending on when you're watching this, I'm guessing one of the first assessments you had in English ATAR this year was a comprehending assessment, and maybe that 48% was you. I've seen this happen so many times. If that was you, don't worry. There are obviously a bunch of other assessments to make up for that mark if you weren't happy with it. But the point being, imagine you get 48% in this comprehending assessment. What we're going to do now is look at some examples of a fixed mindset in response to that mark of 48%, and then how those responses could be reframed to look at it through the perspective of a growth mindset. So all the stuff in red is obviously going to be the fixed mindset. All the stuff in green is going to be the growth mindset. This is an example of the fixed mindset in response to that 48% mark for the comprehending assessment. Why didn't Mr. Smith just give me the extra 2%? Growth mindset. Ask Mrs. Smith for more feedback to see how you could have passed the assessment. Next example. This subject is so stupid and I hate it. It's definitely not going to be in my top 4. Maybe you can resonate with that one. Accept that not liking the subject doesn't mean it can't be in your top 4. In other words, just because you don't like it doesn't mean that you can't do really well in it, especially now that you've got access to this course. Next example. English is so subjective and Mrs. Smith just doesn't like me. I remember thinking that many times in year 11 and 12, and I don't know, maybe you've had that feeling of being stuck within a certain like mark range between, I don't know, 50 to 60%, for instance, because you might think your teacher knows what your capabilities are. So then whenever they come and mark some of your work, you might think they're never going to give me a mark higher than 60 because they know that's just where I'm at, even though I believe the writing that I'm producing is actually worth greater than 60%. Again, example of a fixed mindset. The growth mindset equivalent: embrace the formula that this course teaches and write responses that are objectively awesome. What I will be teaching you in this course, it is a foolproof formula to writing amazing responses. When it comes time for Mrs. Smith to read your assessments, you won't be forced into that mark range of 50 to 60% because you've written an objectively great response. Next example. If I had Mr. Johnson instead, I definitely would have passed. Brings back so many memories. You heard about one teacher who would always give higher marks, and then maybe your teacher was giving much lower marks. Here's the growth mindset equivalent. Stop blaming others and take accountability for your own results by studying effectively. It's a bit of a slap in the face, I know, but it's true. You can't really change the circumstances that you're in with the teacher that you've got. And look, you maybe could if you really tried, but honestly, is it worth the time and effort that all of that would take when you could have just spent that time studying properly with English ATAR Made Simple? Just take accountability for the marks that you've gotten, whether or not you like them, and keep moving forward. Another example, this is the last pair. How can Mrs. Smith give me 48% when she's just ticked a few sentences and left one cross on my assessment? Again, probably resonates with you, but put yourself in Mrs. Smith's shoes. Maybe she's got 5 or 6 different English classes, and think about how many assessments all of those English classes have to do. Mrs. Smith could have literally 100 essays to mark at a given point in the year. They're most likely going to have to be marked at home in her own time, when she would probably rather be doing other things and marking hundreds of essays. Just put that into perspective next time you think about the lack of feedback that you've gotten on an assessment. In order to give detailed feedback on an essay, at least for me personally, I like to have a full hour. And if Mrs. Smith has 100 essays and the turnaround needs to be 2 weeks, something like that, that's 100 hours of marking in 2 weeks. That's literally more than the entire amount of time that she's worked at school in that fortnight. Something to bear in mind. Anyway, that was a tangent. What is the growth mindset equivalent of the example we see here? Well, start reviewing your work using the principles taught in this course to see what you did and didn't do well. That is one of the great things that this course equips you with. It equips you with the tools necessary to put yourself in the shoes of Mrs. Smith or a waste mark. It gives you steps to go through and review your responses thoroughly and be able to give yourself your own feedback, and you can make up for the lack of feedback you might be getting from Mrs. Smith. After mentioning all of this, you might be thinking, that's pretty lame. I don't want to be that person who always goes up to the teacher and asks them stuff. I get that, but let me put that conundrum into perspective for you. If you're planning to go to uni, it's highly likely you need to pass this subject, unless you want to do the stat over the summer while your mates are having the best 12 weeks of their life. Meanwhile, you've got this test looming over your head that you need to pass. That's the worst case scenario. And if you can avoid that by just getting over this idea of it being lame to ask your teacher questions in class, I think that's a pretty fair trade-off. But what do I know? Moving on. Relevant extracts from the book. You don't have to analyze them. That will be coming later. Old mate Carol Dweck, she's a professor at a university, and her students basically begged her to write this book because of the principles that they'd learnt in classes. And after she took that leap, she conducted a study based on students, I think in their first or second year of university, and this was what she came up with. Students with the growth mindset earned better grades in the course. They bounced back and completely took charge of their learning and motivation. The people with the fixed mindset simply just got worse grades. Next, test scores don't tell you where a student could end up. This is a big one. Let's return to the example that I started with a few minutes ago about getting 48% in a comprehending assessment. You might be thinking, shit, I got 48% in this assessment, and that's going to represent the rest of my year doing English ATAR. The growth mindset version of that thought is that if I get 48% now, that means I've got lots of room to improve. And that means that if I can peak on the WACE exam, I can end up on an insanely high score compared to what I started off with at the beginning of the year with 48%. All of this is to say that a bad mark now does not mean a bad mark later, as long as you embrace this idea of a growth mindset and just keep chipping away at the work in this course. Another extract. Mindset was more important than talent. Scoring runs was much more about process than talent. This one was in the context of baseball. Maybe you can understand what the fundamental idea behind this quote. The results that you get in English ATAR, it's not about any innate talent that you have. It's about your process. This one really resonates with me because I wasn't born being good at English. In year 8, I got 47% in my English exam. I hated English with a passion. It wasn't until year 9 where there was one assessment that came along. I remember I was interested in it. I thought, this English thing hasn't been working out for me too well, but maybe this could be a chance to change that trajectory. And I got maybe 65 or 70%. That was the highest mark I'd gotten in English ever. And from there, I just had this little seed of confidence. And I thought, maybe I can actually do well in this. And then from there, that seed grew into, well, I guess, where I'm at now, where I'm delivering this course. So the point being is that I wasn't born being, as it says here, talented at English. I had a process that I followed, and that process enabled me to get better. It enabled me to go from 67% the month before the WACE exam to 76% because of the WACE exam. Another one, you have to apply yourself each day to becoming a little bit better. That is extremely powerful. I could speak for hours on what that sentence represents. This is, as you can see, it's come from John Wooden, and he was a baseball coach, a very successful one. And he was saying that the key to succeeding in any pursuit, whether it be English, baseball, year 12, life, whatever it is not that innate talent, but it's just getting a little bit better each day. You're going to be on this earth for thousands, tens of thousands of days. If you can get 0.00000.1% better each day, over the span of your life, you'll be like this superhuman. That's what this quote is really getting at. Last but not least, a key takeaway. We've learnt a few things in this lesson, namely what a fixed mindset is and what a growth mindset is. The fixed mindset is where you feel like your own talent, your own ability is fixed. It's locked into place, and it was like that the moment you were born. The growth mindset is the opposite of that. It does not accept this idea that your own talent is fixed. It can be improved as long as you're willing to improve on it. And that's what you're doing with this course. You're working at your own ability to do English. Those are the two mindsets. But if you can remember one thing from this lesson, literally just one thing that I'd like you to take away from it, it would be this. And it's really a question. I'd like you to ask yourself, whenever you're feeling stuck with English ATAR, what would someone with a growth mindset do in this situation? And that's all for today's lesson. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep it simple.